Today's daf yomi is Bava Basra Kuf Nun Ches, Bava Basra 158. And today's daf is dedicated for Shemira for the Chayalim, Hatzal for the Shvuyim and a Yeshua for Am Yisrael and the Seis Sarah. So we're continuing with the genre that we had before, where the Mishnah says on Kuf Nun Ches Amud Aleph, Nafo Abayis Alav Ma'al Ishto. So the house falls upon him and on his wife, and he has no sons to inherit from her. So Yorshei Abal, so the husbands, the heirs of the husband, i.e., either his father or his brother or his sons, from another woman, they say Isha Mesa Rishon. The woman has died first, and therefore the heirs of the woman don't get anything because the husband inherited her, and so therefore the husband. And since the husband died last, so he inherited his wife. And so they say he gets all of her assets. So therefore, the heirs of the husband say the wife died first, and therefore the husband inherits everything. And then the husband died, and so therefore we inherit him. Whereas Yorshei Isha, the heirs of the woman, Omrim, they say, Balmes Rishon. They say that the husband died first, and so therefore he doesn't inherit the wife. Isha. And only then did the woman die. And so therefore, the heirs of the husband do not inherit the woman. So Beis Shammai says, under these circumstances, Yachoku. So as we talk about the wife's assets, Beis Shammai says, since neither one has a claim to it, we split it. Beis Hillel Omrim, Nechaskim B'chazkasan. The assets remain in their chazaka. So what are the assets? So we're going to deal with three different types of assets. We have the ksuva. The ksuba is the collection, the bond that's collected by the assets of the that's collected by the assets of the husband of the wife is collected by the wife if the husband predeceases her. So in this case, since we don't know who died first, that remains in the possession of the husband. Ksuvas b'chazkas yorshei abal, the heirs of the husband collected. Nechasim hanichnasim vayotzin ima, whereas the assets that come in and go out with her, then those assets are going to be b'chazkas yorshei av. Those are going to remain in the domain of the father's heirs, and we'll see what that has to mean. The heirs of not the father of the husband, but the father of the wife. So first of all, we have to discuss, we'll see what the Rashbam says, the Yorshei Isha, what it says, the assets of the wife. We're talking about the Nichse. There's three different types of assets. There's a ksuba, and there's a Nichse Mulug, and the Nichse Tzon Barzel. Nichse Tzon Barzel, Rashbam says, this is a nedunya, this is like a dowry that she takes with her from her estate, and it writes in the ksuba that at the termination of the marriage, the husband has to give her a specific amount of money. And then, in addition to that, there is the nichse malug. So the nichse malug, these are the assets that she keeps. She's going to get it back, but while they're married, the husband is entitled to the fruits of it. And so Beis Shammai says you split it because it's money that's in doubt. But some say in Gemara and Yevamos that they're not arguing about the ksuva, but he's only arguing about the rest. And Beis Hillel says the nechasim remain in their chazaka, meaning to say the ksuba stays with the father's estate, with the husband's estate, and the nechasim ayotzinima go back to the wife's father. And so therefore, okay, so now we go on to the Gemara's discussion of it. So the Gemara says on the top of 158b, when it says, Beis Hillel, nechasim b'chazkas, and the assets remain in their chazaka, b'chazkas me. And who's chazaka? What's Beis Hillel saying? So Rabbi Yochanan Amar b'chazkas yorshei abal. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that they remain in the domain of the husband. What does that mean? That if the heirs of the husband, that if they went down in value, the husband is responsible, and if they went up in value, the husband gets that, and he's able to sell it and get and therefore this is not similar to the Nilchse Malug, where he just gives it back to her. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says. Whereas Rabbi Lazar says, B'chezkas Yorshei Isha. It goes back to the estate of the woman, meaning to say, because she brought it from her father's house. Reish Lakish Mishum Bar Kapar Amar Yachloku. Reish Lakish says they split it. Why? Since he wants to inherit everything, since the father wants to inherit everything, and the other side also wants to inherit everything, then they split it because both of them have a claim that they are the presumptive owner. Because she brought it from her father's house, and since he accepted responsibility, he's acquired them. And so, in a certain degree, it's like his money, in a certain degree, it's like her money. And that's why Beis Hillel says Nechasan b'chazkasan, meaning Beis Hillel is saying b'chazkas shneyan, that they both split it. And so that's what he says. So Reish Lakish says, name of Bar Kapara, v'chein tani Bar Kapara. All of that, what does it mean? It means that, so Reish Lakish says, name of Bar Kapara, he says, Yachoku, v'chein tani Bar Kapara, hovalo bal yarash, v'alo bal yarash, since they're both coming to inherit it. So therefore, for this reason, we're going to say that they split it. Therefore, we're going to say that they split it because they're both coming to inherit it. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. So basically, Bar Kapara, according to Reish Lakish, as the way Reish Lakish explains it, Bar Kapara is agreeing with the reasoning of both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. He agrees that Tzom Barzel property was in the husband's domain because he's responsible for any loss of its value. But he also says that it's in his wife's possession since she brought it in. So therefore, he's saying that what Beis Hillel is saying is the property remains in their possession, meaning to say that the Tzom Barzel was in the possession of both the husband and wife. So therefore, they divide this property. They divide the property. Okay, so now we go on to the hold on, the next Mishnah. Just want to check something back here. Okay, and the next Mishnah says as follows: Nafal Abayis Alav Val Imo. So the house fell, Rahman al on both himself and on his mother. So Rashbam explains, like the house fell on Rachel, who's the wife of Yaakov, while she was a widow, and on Yosef, her son from Yaakov. And Yaakov had no other son. And there is no other man who claims that they're also equivalent to inherit the mother, like for example, her brothers or fathers. So therefore, so what we're going to say that now that they have equal claims, so nafal ba'isalav val imo, so elu ve'elu modin sheyichoku. So in this case, the house fell upon a man and upon, so they fell upon him and upon his mother. And so the question, what we want to say in this case, who died first? So the mother in this case is a widow, and this was her only child. And so therefore, the paternal brothers, he had brothers who were born to him from a different father, as Rashbam said, and they claim that they're entitled to the estate, even though they are not related to her, but because they're his half brother and they inherit him. And that since he died after her, he inherited her. But the mother's relatives say, no, their son died first, and so he never got anything from his mother. And so they say, the mother's relatives say that they could get it. So Elu ve'elu modin sheyachoku. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree in this case that they divide the mother's estate. Why is that the case? Because everyone claims that they're the heirs to the estate based upon who died first, but neither one can prove it. And so therefore, in this case, everybody agrees that they divide the estate. So how is this different from the previous cases on 158A and 157A, where Basil says they don't divide it? So on 157A, they have two different claims. The father's heirs claims that they inherit the estate, but the son's creditors claim a right to collect from the estate. So therefore, Basil gives it to the father's heirs on the grounds that they have a stronger claim. In 158A, both sides claim to have inherited the estate, but Beis Hillel says the estate's different types of assets. Beis Hillel says that that different types of assets are in different possessions. But in our case, both of them are claiming that they inherited the estate, and so therefore, that's why they split it. So comes along Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, and says, Moda ani bazu shenachasim b'chaskasim. I say also in this case that the properties remain in the possession of whoever had them. He says, Beis Shammai would divide, but Beis Hillel says whoever has them would remain with it. And what does that mean? So the Gemara is going to explain it. But meanwhile, Ben Azai says to Rabbi Akiva, Al chalukin anu mitztarin. We're already upset about any argument. And now, now you've come to dispute even the unanimous decision. So Ben Azai is upset that Rabbi Akiva wants to say that there's a dispute here as well. So the Gemara says, what does Rabbi Akiva mean when he says Modani Bazusha and that they remain in whoever possession they're in? Me. Whose possession are they in? Rabbi Eli Omer Yorshayim. They're in the domain of the mother's heirs. Because since the mother was a widow, she had these assets. And so therefore her heirs are going to get it. Rabbi Zera says Yorshaya Ben. No, it's in the domain of the heirs of the son. Because since the son is clearly going to inherit, so therefore he's the only one who's going to inherit if he outlives. So therefore we view it as being in his possession. Kisalak Rabbi Zera come b'shitase to Rabbi Eli. When Rabbi Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael, he explained that he now adopted the position of Rabbi Eli and says that it's in the domain of the mother. And come Rabba b'shitase to Rabbi Zera. So when Rabbi Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael, he accepted the position of Rabbi Eli, and Rabba took the position of Rabbi Zera that it was in the domain of the heirs of the son. Amar Rabbi Zera, Shema mina, avira de Eretz Yisrael ma'achkim. We see from here that the heir of Eretz Yisrael makes me smarter because I didn't have this position, but now that I went up to Eretz Yisrael, I changed my mind. So we see from here that the heir of Eretz Yisrael makes us wiser. But time am I? What's the reason why Rabbi Zera retracted his position? Since when the mother was widowed, the estate came into the possession of the tribe from which she was descended, so therefore remains in the possession of her heirs even after her death. So that's the logic of Abaye. And that's the logic of Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Eli. So the Gemara says, we're already in pain, and you're adding, but Rabbi Simlai, Ada Amra. So this says to us, Ben Azai Talmud Chaver Rabbi Akiva. This proves that Ben Azai was actually a colleague of Rabbi Akiva. And we know that he was one of the four who went into the paradise with Rabbi Akiva. Why? Because the Karmel is Shabbat, because he spoke to him without dressing him like a Rebbe, he dressed him as Yukam, and not in a more respectful manner. Shalchom mitam, so they sent a message from Eretz Yisrael. Ben Shalava ben Aviv b'Chai Aviv. So this halacha is not entirely relevant immediately, but it will be eventually relevant. So they said, a son who borrowed the assets of his father while his father was still alive, mace, and then he died. Beno motzi miyad al kuchos. So the son borrowed from using his father's assets as collateral while his father was alive, and then he died. His son seizes from the purchasers. V'zui shekasha b'dinei mamos. And this is something that is difficult to understand about monetary matters. So initially, we're talking about the Gemara assumes that this is a father and his son, and the son borrowed against the father's estate, and now the son can take it away from the purchasers. What does that mean? Love on my mapik. So if he's borrowed, then what's he seizing? And what are the purchasers doing? Meaning to say, who are the purchasers? This is how we ruled. This is if we learned something. This is how we learned. Itmar ben shemachar b'nilchsei aviv b'chayi aviv. A son sold some of his father's property during his father's lifetime. But no motzimi adol kuchos. The son could take it away from the purchasers. The Gemara is going to go into explaining it, but that'll be for the Daf Yomi for Sunday. So we'll stop here. Wish everybody a good Shabbos.